And welcome back to We Are the People. This is your host, Jason Preston. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us again today. We have an incredible warrior, angel, just a light warrior who we have today, someone who I'm honored to be able to have to come in and help open our eyes to what is happening in this world, has been happening. And really what I think she's doing is unfolding some of the nefarious plans of the enemy. We are in spiritual warfare, and when it's not only spiritual warfare, but it is physical. And that's one of the things I love about survivors is they are opening our eyes to the physical reality of the spiritual battle that we are part of. And she is a close friend of Kathy O'Brien's. They went through the MKUltra program together, and it'll be an absolute honor. I'm really excited, and I appreciate the individual who brought her and aligned this up so that we could have her today. Before we jump into the show, I'm going to please remind you to go to our website, wearethepeople.org, and subscribe. We are this to me and to Alexia. This isn't a podcast. This is warfare. This is something that is the podcast is simply a tool to expose the enemy, and we will not stop. We will expose this. We will do everything we can to expose these pedophiles and these people who are hurting children, because we have a God-given responsibility to do so. And if that means saying things and offending people that are in power and that are ruling this country and the state, so be it. And so if these shows get taken down, like the one with the twins, again, you can find that on Rumble, and I encourage you to follow that. Go to Rumble, We Are the People UT, and you can find that show. But if this show gets taken down or others, we will email them out. So go to our website, wearethepeople.org, and subscribe. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to Dr. Juliette Engel. She is a physician, a humanitarian, an author, and survivor of one of the darkest chapters in American intelligence history. Born in 1949 into a family deeply connected to U.S. intelligence with ties to the OSS, CIA, and NSA. Her childhood was anything but ordinary. At the age of 6 in 1955, her own father sold her into the CIA's secret mind control program known as MKUltra, specifically the Monarch branch that targeted children. What followed was years of systematic trauma, dissociation, and what she later came to call sex magic programming, a deliberate effort to fracture a child's mind and create controllable alter identities. One of those identities she would later reclaim was a fierce little warrior she named Sparky. At 17, she escaped with no memory of what had been done to her. She put herself through undergraduate studies and then medical school at the University of Washington. She became a radiologist, built a successful diagnostic practice in the Seattle area, married and raised a family, all while the buried trauma remained locked away. Then in the early 1990s, everything changed. She sold her medical practice and moved to Moscow, where she founded the Miramed Institute. While working to improve care for women and children in the post-Soviet Russia, she uncovered a vast international child trafficking network operating through the state orphanages. That discovery triggered a return of her own suppressed memories, and it also launched what became her life's mission. Through the Angel Coalition, the Underground Railroad she built, she and her teams helped rescue thousands of trafficked children and young women. For that work, the University of Washington School of Medicine awarded her its prestigious Humanitarian Award. Today, Dr. Engel is the author of the memoir Sparky, Surviving Sex Magic, as well as Angels Over Moscow and other works. She continues to speak with clarity and courage about what was done to her, about the documented reality of MKUltra, and about the systems that still protect those who traffic in human lives and human minds. Her story is not only one of unimaginable darkness, it's a story of extraordinary resilience, moral clarity, and the refusal to remain silent. Please welcome Dr. Juliette Engel.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're so thankful to have you. I've been honored to be able to see you on several other shows and be able to follow you for a little bit, and it's a blessing to have you here in Utah to help the people in this incredible state where there is so much mind control, where there is such a high concentration of this type of abuse, to help awaken them to what is happening here. And so we're blessed to have you.
Yeah, I watched your interview with Kathy O'Brien. Kathy's a dear, dear friend of mine. And the thing about the two of us is I'm 77, Kathy's about 70. So we were some of the first into the Monarch program, which is the children's program inside the MKUltra structure. So I'll start at my beginning because it'll explain how this insane project got started, and I think it explains how it got specifically to Utah. In 1945, at the end of the war, the OSS officers, including 5 of my uncles, went to Nuremberg, and because my uncles were German speakers, they specifically interviewed the Nazi scientists from the concentration camps who had committed years. I mean, the Nazi experimentation started in the 1930s with a branch of the party called the Ahnenerbe, which went around the world looking for artifacts and spells and people that could conduct magic. And for instance, they went to the 7 churches of Asia from Revelation, and they specifically went to Pergamon because John had said that was the seat of Satan. And when they got to Pergamon, the temple of Jupiter there was still intact, and they took it. So they took it rock by rock, took it to Berlin. It's now in the on the island of museums in the Berlin River. And it's been closed. You can't get in to see it, but there it is. So I mean, that's how serious they were about collecting powerful artifacts associated with pagan gods, and specifically with Baal worship and Satanism. And so that had gone on in the concentration camps, where they suddenly had access to anybody they wanted to experiment on, and no accountability and unlimited funding. And so when they came to Nuremberg, there were 1,500 doctors from the concentration camps, high-level experimenters and researchers, and rooms full of research on the results of what they'd done. And they sat down with the OSS representatives, including my uncles, who should have hung them and destroyed everything, because it was the farthest humanity had ever gone into the black arts and the science of evil and mind control, because every experiment that they carried out had an element of population control in it. But that's not what the OSS did. The OSS, a few years later, became the CIA, but at that time it was the Office of Strategic Services. They decided that this would be tremendously valuable for the United States to be able to control not only foreign populations, but its own population. And so they started Project Paperclip, and my uncles participated in this, and it was the resettlement of, it looks like about 1,500 of them came to the U.S. There were many more because Great Britain took a bunch, Russia took 1,000. They also went to Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa that I know about. And so this was Project Paperclip, where they brought these people into the United States to Huntsville, Alabama, and then they gave them new identities, and they established them around the United States, providing them with funding and laboratories. And then Project Monarch was launched in 1953. So you had Nuremberg, 1945, 1947. 1947, CIA is founded by a very small group of people, including 5 members of my own family. By 1952, my mother's brother had been part of a group of 20 that started the National Security Agency. You had the first director of the CIA was Allen Dulles. The first, or the Secretary of State at that time was John Foster Dulles, and this group together created, in 1953, created the MKUltra program, and then classified it 18 levels above the president's need to know. They knew it was illegal. They called it an illegal program, but they thought that the results would be worth it. I was born in 1949, so I was born in the middle of this mess. Along with, I had quite a few cousins that I didn't know until many years later, and so to start the program, they needed children to work on. So the people who founded the program put their own children in it, and that's how I got to be in it. So you had the children of generals and intelligence agents and corporations, and then there were exchanges. So I think that's when we get to Utah. I think that's part of what happened. So I was put in it at the age of 55 in a ritual in which my father sold me while I was being sexually abused. And when I was crying out to him to help me, because he was standing there taking money for me, he turned to me and said, just shut up. This is what I raised you for. And that moment, even though I forgot everything else in my life, that moment I never forgot. That stayed with me. But that was the beginning. Actually, the beginning had begun before then, but I can't remember it so well.
That was when you were 6, correct?
I was 6 years old, yes, when I realized my father was never going to protect me or be my friend. And I already knew that my mother wasn't. And
before that, so that's when they sold you to the CIA or into the project. But before that, there was sexual abuse at home. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was. And there was also abuse of my mother. And my mother's brother was the NSA founder. And I think that the sexual abuse and the satanic ritual abuse went way back in the family. But then it which is why the people in Nuremberg, the Americans in Nuremberg, didn't just destroy all this black magic and ritual stuff they'd gotten from the concentration camps, because they knew they'd never be able to conduct experiments that bad in the United States. They've gotten close in countries like Ukraine, where there isn't the oversight, but they cannot, they could never repeat exactly what the Nazis had done. So after that experience with my father, and this is covered in Sparky, because I wanted to get back to writing, not as an adult looking at this, which is what we're doing now. We're all adults. We're looking at this with our analytical minds, because children don't have analytical minds. They have magical minds, magical thinking. And so I wrote Sparky really taking myself back to being a 10-year-old child and what happened, what that was like, how I saw it from a child's perspective. And then at the age of 10, actually created myself. And Sparky is a mythological character that I created because I didn't see myself as strong or smart or capable, or I had bad clothes. I often didn't have any shoes. I mean, it was, and we moved all the time, because as soon as after my father had sold me into the program, I spent half of my time with my family so that I could grow up looking like a normal socialized person, and the other half going from annex to annex. And I'm calling them annexes. I gave you the links. The links in the show notes are to the National Security Archive, so you can look at. They list the people who started the program. I've met most of those men. I knew Sidney Gottlieb, who they brought in to head the program. They brought him in 1953, so he was there when I arrived. had been he'd been in the OSS, and he was head of tactical services of the OSS and was known as the chief poisoner of the CIA. And his specialty was developing bioweapons. And the Nazis had done a lot of experimentation with mescaline. But in Switzerland during the war, Eli Lilly had developed LSD, and they saw the future of mind control, the drugs that increased levels of serotonin as the future of mind control. So, and that's in the documents. You'll see that Sidney Gottlieb was brought in to head the program. He was a Zionist. He was a big supporter of Israel and bioweapons, and also a population control. And and you can see pictures of him, and you can also see pictures of what they called safe houses and we called annexes. So each annex I'd be in, and this was starting in Seattle. I started this process in Seattle, and then most of my experience after that was in California and Mexico. But each annex would have a Dr. Green who ran the program, and every Dr. Green at that time spoke with a heavy German accent. And I think some of them barely spoke English, but they were the program directors, and they were all called Dr. Green. And then his chief assistant was a Dr. White, and the first Dr. White was Dr. George White, who was my program handler. So I saw a lot of him. He's in the documents. You can see a picture of him, who is the most vile, violent, disgusting human being. I've never met I guess I have, but I hope you never meet the equivalent of a creature like that. So, and then we were taken care of by what were called nanny blacks. The nanny blacks, you never knew if they were men or women. So they were ambiguous genders, dressed in long black dresses like nuns. And if you ever get a chance, this is censored in the United States, but if you ever get a chance to see the Olympic game opening ceremonies of 2012, that's actually it's a Saturnalia. It's an MKUltra ceremony, and it's a Saturnalia, and it concludes with a child sacrifice.
Really?
And yes, it does. It's the most disgusting thing, and it's cut out in the United States. I had to bring it from Europe, and then they won't play it on your equipment. But I think it's out there. I'm sure it's out there on the internet by now. But yeah, it ends with a huge child sacrifice.
I hate to interrupt, but why do you think it is that all these Olympics are so satanic? Because it seems like all these opening ceremonies, it's so overt, becoming so overt.
Well, so are the half times at the NFL.
Yes.
And the entertainment industry, and I can get to that. I know how that got the way it got. I think the founders, who were probably 30 people by 1953, had to figure out how to disperse this program around the United States, because it had to stay secret. It had to stay amongst their friends. And they had unlimited money to do it with. So I think that what they did is what the State Department always does, and that's to put out a grant tender. And they offered this tender, as they always do, to their friends. And their friends were the secret societies all over the country. And that included the Templars. It included my great-grandfather was North American commander of Knights Templar. And his sons were all Shriners. And then Rosicrucians, Mormons. So the connection to George Romney, he was very involved with the MKUltra program, and he was someone that I met in the 1960s. I mean, I was a victim. They were the coming together, because in the early days, because there weren't so many of us, they would talk in front of us. And Kathy had the same experience. You know, they'd come in and they'd start, it's even in Sparky, they'd start talking about us, and like we were stupid and wouldn't someday remember. But you do remember, yeah.
But George Romney was actually an abuser, not just someone you
Oh, yeah. And I write about it in Sparky. I put one Saturnalia in Sparky and describe it in detail, because it's something that happened over and over and over. And the only way that I could survive being abused by multiple men as a child was to completely dissociate. So I was never in my head when this was going on. I was floating off somewhere. And in Sparky, I detail how I did that. And later I taught hundreds of Russian children how to do this and how to survive the severe abuse they were going through. It's a survival mechanism for children. And I should tell you that the Saturnalias are always at Christmas. It's because Christmas has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. It's the holiday to celebrate the birth of Nimrod. Nimrod equals Satan, equals Baal, equals Baphomet. So, I mean, we're so mind controlled. We're celebrating the birth of the demon. It has nothing to do with Jesus, who is their biggest threat. So anyway, I do explain it in there, and that's because, and so it was always a big blur to me. But what I do remember is when they were talking about me, like or having a staff meeting, and we could see them, you know. So that's how I know who was there, and it was sometimes it was Pat Brown, who I knew. He was the governor of California, specifically in Mexico. Alan Cranston, who became a senator, who was later my handler. And when I actually lived close to the Stanford Research Institute. And so, yes, George Romney was there. And I think Mitt Romney went to Stanford, didn't he, for a while? But anyway, he'd been at Harvard, and that's where he'd met Benjamin Netanyahu. So you've got the link between Mormonism, Zionism, and then the move to Utah.
Hold on, George Romney or Mitt Romney. So who is it that would have that relationship?
It was Mitt Romney. They were the same age and met at Harvard. I think they were at Harvard at the same time, and then came out to Utah together. You'd have to look at that in depth, because Mitt Romney was my age, so it was his father that I saw. So
that's an interesting connection. So that's the connection with Zionism to Utah's.
It's a real thing.
From Mitt.
It's a real thing. And when they're talking about how could you have Zionism at places like Fort Huachuca, is that in Arizona or is that in Utah?
I'm not sure. Fort Huachuca, you said? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you how that happened and what that connection is to me is. I escaped from the MKUltra program, from their physical control of my body and my person, and being forced to do all these ghastly things. A lot of it involved the sex magic program, which was developed by Aleister Crowley. And that's a program about projecting yourself into another person and creating a sexual response in them so that you can manipulate them. I mean, you look at all these guys that are falling for honeypots and getting snared up into sex scandals, and you wonder, why do they do it? Well, they're standing up against fully trained agents who are able to project sexual energy that they're not aware of. So,
and you were trained as a child to do that. Is that correct?
yes, starting in Disneyland, starting in Frontierland. I'll tell you about the first time they took me out there to do that. Yeah. They kept us from eating. That's how if you want to control children, you starve them. So, and I wrote about this in Sparky. So I must have been about 7, and they took a bus full of us really hungry kids. They just gave us these jelly beans that were obviously full of drugs. They drove us out to Disneyland, and they dropped me off all by myself in Frontierland. And they told me I had no money, that if I wanted to eat, I needed to find a daddy. And if I wanted to go back home again ever, that I would have to get that daddy into the Wild Toad ride. And there's a place in the Wild Toad ride, if you've ever been in, I don't know, have you ever been on it? There's a place where you believe you're driving on a railroad track, and it's pitch dark, and a light starts coming at you, and it sounds like a train. But behind the light, there's cameras. And my job was to get that daddy's hands where they shouldn't be, all over my body. So he got photographed. And then I would take off. And then I hung around. I did this successfully, got breakfast, and then was hungry again about lunchtime. So I got another daddy and got lunch, and then did the same thing again. And then when they came to collect me and take me back to the bus, there were only half of the kids. So only half of the kids the implication was that half of the kids were gone.
Now, was this during regular hours, or is this like an after hours? So you're out there trying to seduce just regular men out there.
Yeah.
That was your assignment, was to go out and just seduce regular men and get them compromised. So it was training, basically. Is that correct?
It was training. Yes. I had to be able to convince a grown man that I didn't know to do this for me.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow.
And I'm tempted sometimes to go to Disneyland, see if I can spot kids doing it, because they're probably still training them the same way. But I got home, and so the sex magic training continued. Another big element of my programming was the psychic. So they decided that I had very strong psychic potential. They called it CSI. And they would take groups of us kids down to the beach in Mexico. And there's places up and down the West Coast where they call it the membrane is very thin between realities, and that if you have the ability to do it, you can jump through dimensions into other realities and into other times, and interact and bring back demons and stories and pictures, and not this kind of picture, but mental pictures. And so I spent, I have no long, I was about 7 or 8, and my parents dropped me off in Tijuana. And the next thing I really remember is being on the beach with about 30 other kids, and we were all just in our underpants. And we were in our underpants for I don't know how long, but I got completely sunburned and dark-skinned, and my hair got so bad that when my parents came to take me back across the border, they came to pick me up. I had no clothes. Nobody knew where my suitcase was. And they had to cut off my hair. And so they they put me in the car. So there's 3 middle-class looking white people, my mother, my father, and my brother. And then there's me. And I was wearing my father's shirt because I had to wear something. So my father had no shirt, and he's driving us back across the Mexican border. And of course, we get stopped, and my hair has been shaved off. So, I mean, they point to me and say, "Who's that?" And my parents both looked at me, and my father particularly looked at me and looked like he'd never seen me before in his life. He couldn't remember my name, my birth date, anything about me. And my mother just sort of went along with it. And I thought, they're gonna leave me here. They're just gonna leave me here. I know that's what they were thinking. And so I spoke up and took over, told them our address, told them who they were, told them my parents' birthdays. You know, I wasn't going to sit still for being dumped in Tijuana with no clothes. And my father got out of the car and went into the office. They made some phone calls, probably to the governor's office, because the governor of California had been down there for these rituals. And the rituals included lots of LSD, and it also included black masses carried out in these old abandoned church. The site is now the Autonomous University of Mexico.
This is where
at that time.
This is where you were, where this ritual. Yeah, would you share a little bit what happened when you were in Tijuana or in this area?
Well, we lived like feral children, and they would not feed us all day, and then they'd be the adults would start having cookouts, and they'd have visitors like the governor and his family, and senators and high-level people, and they'd be looking at us like a bunch of savages. And if we wanted to eat, we had to go down to the shore, leave our bodies. So they'd give us drugs, and the drugs were, I believe, mostly LSD based. But we'd have to put on a show about going to other times and other places and bringing back entities. And I put on a good show because I wanted food. And also there were, and children died. So of the 30 that went down there, I think half of them died. And I thought they'd died because they'd gotten lost when they'd gone out of their bodies and they couldn't get back, because it felt like that sometimes to me, like I barely got back into my own body when my energetic body had gone out into other dimensions and other times. And I'd come back and some of them would be dead. So maybe they starved to death or had I don't know. I was a child. They also had black masses in the abandoned church. And if you listen to Joan Baez, do you ever listen to her music?
Yeah, she's a musician from like the 60s or 70s, right?
Yeah, she was in my high school just before me. And she wrote a song called Play It Backwards.
You don't have to play me backwards to get the meaning of my verse. You don't have to die and go to hell to feel the devil's curse. Well, I thought my life was a photograph on the family Christmas card. Kids all dressed in buttons and bows and lined up in the yard. Oh, the golden days of childhood, so lyrical and warm. Or did the picture start to fade? the night begins, there's a pop of skin and a sudden rush of scarlet. There's a little boy riding on a goat's head and a little girl playing the harlot. There's a sacrifice in an empty church, a sweet little baby rose, and a man in a mask from Mexico is peeling off my clothes. I've seen them light the candles, and I've heard them bang the drum, and I've cried, Mama, I'm cold as ice, and I got no place to run. So I'm paying for protection, smoking out the truth, chasing recollections, nailing down the proof. Don't have to play me backwards to get the meaning of my verse. You don't have to die and go to hell to feel the devil's curse. And I'll stand before your altar and tell everything I know. I've come to claim my childhood at the chapel of Baby Rose. I've seen them light the candles, and I've heard them bang the drum. I've seen them light the candles, and I've heard them bang the drum.
And anybody that wants to know what goes on in a black mass satanic ritual, play that song. I think they've changed the words. I try to get the words from the 60s because it starts out with the night begins with a pop of skin and a sudden rush of stars, because that's what happens. They take you and plug you full of drugs and then take off your clothes, and then satanic abuse would start. And the thing about my situation as opposed to other children's, because I'm sure one of the reasons they chose that area, besides being a portal to other dimensions, which it is, I have to say, it's definitely that. There are a number of orphanages around there, so they basically had free children, and they're the ones that died. The children like me, they called us the children of the organizers, the children of the high officials and senators and whatever. They called us the goats, and the rest of the kids were the sheep. And and you see that today, we were like the management class, but below us were the useless eaters, the sheep. They were expendable. So that's who died. So I was abused, I was used, I was forced to create these satanic dances and do all these things. But the other children died, and getting over that survivor's guilt was as much as anything what drove me to create a massive rescue underground railroad when I did that in the former Soviet Union. Yeah. I was just so angry.
Because all these rituals, all these, anything they want, whenever they're trying to manifest something or get something from, the darkness, it always requires a sacrifice, correct?
Yes, it does.
And so that's why I talked to so many survivors, and that's why sacrifice is such a, if you want something, whether it's secret knowledge or to travel or to see something or to experience something, or whether it's, God of, whether when you're at war, you want the God, one of these ancient spirits of war, you offer a sacrifice, which again, this has gone on since the dawn of time, right?
Yes, but it's gone on steroids because of the involvement of the German Nazis and then the massive funding of it and spreading it all throughout the secret societies of the United States. So the one time that Congress did tried to do oversight of the program was in 1976. And at that time, there were functioning programs, registered programs in 80 universities and hospitals across the country, and a total of 150 programs operating that they knew about. And then they said, well, there could be any number of unknown programs. We just pay the money and there's no oversight, and we don't know, what their results are, baloney. But it had grown from just a few individuals in 1953. 20 years later, it was all across the country and had major program sites like McGill University and Georgetown University, Stanford Research Institute. And I can tell you that from 1960, it's not after I escaped from Sparky, from the physical aspect where I was a physical prisoner, I escaped and went to the University of Washington, put myself through medical school, and then didn't remember anything. Now looking back, so this was at the age of 17. So I became a new person then. And the hardest thing for me to remember is, okay, what specifically did I escape from? And I have recently remembered, and it's a key link to what's happening. That is that I was living in Palo Alto, or around the Bay Area, from 1961 to 1966. And I was in programs at Stanford Research Institute at Stanford. And then at some of their facilities, like I know Coyote Hills out on the Salt Flats. I wrote about that. That's Sparky. But I was also at the Presidio and spent a lot of time, that 6 years, at Fort Point. And Fort Point Presidio is a star fort on the northwest corner of San Francisco. It was there before anybody else got there. And the point of the star goes out under what's now the Golden Gate Bridge. And Fort Point is of all places on the West Coast, it's the place where the membrane, the veil, the boundary between dimensions is the most fragile and the most energized, because on one side of Fort Point, you have the ocean. On the other side, you have brackish water from San Francisco Bay, and that narrow inlet that flows under the Golden Gate Bridge is the fastest flowing tidal change in the world. And so you can imagine what happens when the salt water hits the brackish water and the release of ions and energy. And then what I was doing specifically at Fort Point was harmonics. So we would do what was called jumping the slice. So jump into that space with your energetic body, bring back music, bring back stories that were then used to write the Satanic Bible.
What do you mean? Could you tell me what that kind of helped me as a
that's a lot.
person?
I gave you a lot.
Yeah, because we can see there's this world out there that exists. It's the real world, and you've experienced it. You understand it. It's the world as it is, and most of us over here we grew up in the Truman Show as the sheep, and
Disney,
everything is. What's that?
Disney defined what's normal for Americans, and it's not.
What did Disney? Disney. He
was part of the whole MKUltra German imports.
Yeah. So help me understand, because again, we live it, we as the sheep, and we see this so much here in Utah too with these cults. we live in this world where we think everything's as it appears to be, the world that was created by the media and the winners write the history. But
yeah, you got to get over that.
Right. So what does help us understand this energy, what was going on there?
Well, I'll tell you who was there with me at Fort Point. And at Fort Point from 1961 to 1966, and then on into the 70s, was the headquarters of psychological war of the U.S. Army.
Interesting.
There it was. That was Fort Point. So why were they doing harmonics and satanic rituals? Well, who else was there? Who else was there was Anton LaVey, who was about 10 years older than me. He was the founder of the Church of Satan. He wasn't really, but nominally he was.
Yeah, he was married to a Mormon. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the ties are crazy when you start to understand.
It's not surprising. It really isn't. And so he was there, and the person that was there with me who is my age is Michael Aquino.
Oh, Michael Aquino. He was the one married to the his wife.
Yeah,
there you go.
He was married to Rebecca Blood, and but not then. So when I knew him, he was 1 year older than me. So I was 12 to 17. He would have been 13 to 18. So he was a scared, skinny teenager, not at all what he became later. And also there was Charles Manson. He was one of the organizers of because we were doing harmonics and music and really creating new age music. It was invented right there using the harmonics from the interdimensional slice, which was the goal, was to bring that energy into the music and then out into the crowd with all the sex magic and draw everybody in. So I was being trained as a performer to do that. I was a musical protege. And so he was there. Phil Spector was always wherever Charles Manson was. And, but they weren't, he hadn't, I don't think he'd killed anybody yet. He was in the program as a I guess as a goat, because he would be the one that drove us everywhere and set up musical instruments, and they would like take us and drive us to the different canyons. So, I mean, we were all over California. How exactly we got from place to place, I don't remember, mostly in white vans, which is still how they transport unaccompanied minors that come over the border, probably the same companies. But he would drive us to parties where we were called the freaks. So our job was to get out there, dance, get everybody high on LSD, get all the record executives or whoever they wanted to blackmail naked on the ground and photographed so that people like Phil Spector could move in and then sign them up for contracts for groups. You know, a lot of those groups were really bad, but a lot of the music on the coming out in the 60s, Charlie Manson was in the background. He was playing. I was doing backup vocals. It was quite a sophisticated musical setup, and people were always shocked when they found out these groups really couldn't play instruments or sing very well. It had all been done harmonically through electronics. So I was there with those people, and what Anton LaVey and Aquino were doing was creating the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set, SET. And for the life of me, I can't remember what SET stands for. You'll never find it trying to look it up. It stands for something like, it's a technical term. Everybody thinks it's the God set. Well, it's not. It's like an in-joke that it's really about mind control and how stupid people are.
Well, I think Satan has always had a desire to control and take away people's agency And I think mind control is the ultimate way to do that, right?
Yes, and the ultimate goal of the Nazi program, the Anna Nerb, the research, the underlying research at the concentration camps, and then in the Monarch program and MKUltra, and then at Fort Point, was to replace God.
Yeah.
So to create man as God and then destroy God and then rule the universe.
Yeah. I mean,
and a big problem they had, and this is going to come out sometime at NASA, is that the human being cannot leave this planet. We cannot go through the Van Allen belt. We can't get off Earth. And this group desperately wants to get off of Earth. So creating hybrid human beings, chimeras, cybernetic, half human, half robot.
Transhumanism. I mean, everything that's coming right now with that's a huge movement. They're moving towards right now.
That was started then with cybernetics and the ideas of breeding chimeras. Well, that actually comes from as early as the 1930s with the Nazis. They had breeding programs trying to improve the human genome by breeding to other humans, but also to other species. So where are all those beings? They're somewhere. They didn't go away. I think I think they look pretty human. So, but anyway,
so there's a world out there that we have no idea that's going on, you know.
But it doesn't like the sheep. And if the sheep want to continue on this planet, they've got to wake up.
Hey guys, just want to thank you for sitting with us and listening and wrestling through these hard conversations. I just want to take a quick moment to just again, remind you the water that is out there, we cannot rely that the government is cleaning the water effectively. We know there's all sorts of pharmaceuticals. We know that there's problems. I mean, it. There are options out there, and one of the options is ROs. ROs are great. They do a good job of stripping things out of the water, but they also strip the minerals out. And one of the things we do know is that stripping the minerals out of the water leaves the water hungry or dead. And one of the things about hungry and dead water is, and there is research behind it, we'll get that. We can find it on our website, or we'll actually put it here on the screen, is that this hungry water when it goes through your body, will pull the minerals out of your water or out of your body or food. Your body needs real living water. And that is the thing. One of the things I love about Century H2O is it doesn't just pull the arsenic that is in your water. We've done tests in Utah that is in your water. It doesn't just pull the garbage out. It also leaves the minerals which God designed to be in your water that make it healthy and high alkaline. So if you don't have a solution, please go to weirdpeople.org, click on wellness, and check out our systems. Again, whether it's whole house where it's taking care of all the water you bathe in, the water you drink, or whether it's just under the sink, or if it's the emergency solution, which again, even if it's not for emergency, you can use it for feeding your horses or your cows or your chickens or watering your yard. We use that for our chickens. So anyways, we appreciate you. We have the greatest respect for you. And let's jump back into the show. Yeah, I think, God gave, this gift of humanity to us to be able to be here on earth. He gave us bodies and to be able to experience life. And I think Satan and these fallen angels, these entities want to override God's creation, God's gift, which God's individuals and us. I think there's been a war.
God.
And defeat his children, inhabit their spirits, inhabit their bodies.
And that's why they hate Jesus so much, is that he gave the sheep the tools, opened their eyes.
I struggle. I've talked to enough people. I've heard people talk about this, this reference to these people that they put these survivors, these victims through enough torture. And then they say, if you survive it, you're no longer a sheep, you're now a goat. And that is like a something of value to them. They want to be a goat. And that's why you see that some of these, Baphomet, they worship goats. And now it's interesting because now when I hear people say, oh, you're the goat, I'm like, I don't think that's such a good term, you know, and they say it's the greatest of all time, but I think I see the world differently now.
It
Go ahead.
definitely is not. And the joke on the sheep is that they can never be a goat. You were born a goat. We were born the bloodline. We come from thousands of years of breeding, and I've done my ancestry. I can find it. But the joke is all these people running around with blue hair and doing horrible, violent acts, thinking it takes them to goat status. It just makes them. And I wish I could. I still just don't remember. I mean, I was right there at the beginning of the Temple of Set, and the whole sheep goat thing was part of it, and traveling through the slice and bringing back lore from ancient civilizations. Did we do that? They believed we did it, so that went into I was one of the people that could do calligraphy on skin, and then these stories would be written, and then they were included in whoever has that parchment compilation, which is the Bible of Satan. I have no idea where that is. I would think the Vatican would be a good place to look, but
probably. You talked about your genealogy, and you said that your one of your maybe your uncle or someone was or you had family that came as Knights Templar. Tell me what you know about the Knights Templar, because I understand that isn't one of these secret societies that has always been around and is not good, and you see them glorified these days. And I see them it's a group that's always been very evil, that has been involved in satanic, in very satanic. And then the irony is you look at Pete Hegseth, and he's got the one of these tattoos on his chest, and I'm like, oh, of course he does. And it's like, and you see these organizations, it feels like almost warring against each other, some of these ancient secret societies.
This is a really good point, and this is where I was going with explaining how the State Department dispersed these grants. I'm positive that's what they did. So anybody that had a friend, because the secret societies had to be willing to take in a German family and find them a home and support them and introduce them to the country club and all this stuff, and my uncles did this. I've seen the gifts they received from the grateful Germans. So it was a tight club, but an expanding club that sort of went out of control. So all over California, you've got all kinds of little secret societies and big secret societies. You've got Scientology, you've got the Mormon religion, you've got the Rosicrucians, you've got the Templars, you've got I don't even know them all, but each one got their program. So they were all getting the information and the drugs to use. So they all got the training on how to do mind control. They got their contingent of goats, the children who were going to carry this on into the government. And I'll tell you where that went. And then they were free to do whatever. So now, 80 years later, you've got hundreds and hundreds of groups, and the Germans are no longer identifiable as Germans. They've been completely integrated, into American society, and they've had families and we're 3 generations out. So we can't even trace back who they were. And they're competing with each other. I just don't think of course they would. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, power.
You go back in history, and they're competing with each other, and one group is trying to take over everything. And who have you got in the White House? I mean, Trump is completely surrounded by Zionists, but that's there. What about the rest of the country? Everybody's got their
Jesuits.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these
Jesuits are
secret,
all over.
yeah, and there's all these secret societies, and it's, you know, it's fascinating because all this has done is metastasized since, I mean, it's always gone on, but really since MKUltra, since it was really the government really was hijacked. Um,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden there was no more guardrails. No, I mean, once it took over with CIA and it spread like a virus and a cancer across the country, even though officially it ended, like the fact of the matter is this is generational. And I mean, the same thing happened, like right in Utah in 1980, the Glenn Pace memo came out. It was exposed how rampant this was within our own church. But what happens? Oh, everything is, it's gone quiet. And so everyone thinks it's over. And the reality is this evil, these secret organizations that all have the same master are really behind the scenes, putting pieces of the puzzle together, preparing for the Antichrist is what I see.
Yes, absolutely. And in 1976, when after the church hearings in Congress, which is when Richard Helms claimed that the MKUltra had been discontinued and that all the records had been destroyed so that people like me could never find themselves. I'm sure that that's completely untrue. But then that's 1976, 1978, the fully funded Senior Executive Service appears. And if you don't know what that is, everybody needs to understand what the Senior Executive Service is. It is a fully funded, it's the deep state. It is a group of people. Nobody knows where they came from. Nobody knows. If you go on their website, at least 2 years ago, you might have to way back it, but you'll see that they claim that they now run 76 of the federal agencies. That's true, because if you're getting federal money from the government, you have to take these people. So these people are throughout law enforcement, throughout the judicial system, throughout the congressional staffers. They get appointed by someone, no one knows who. When I ran my NGO in Moscow, we would get these people sent to us. They got 10 times the salary anyone in the organization got. They were disruptive. They could demand to see everything. They could audit us. And if we didn't agree, then we were automatically cut off from funding. And they all come from the Senior Executive Service. So you look at if you remember the FBI agents that behaved so atrociously a few years ago, one of them was even convicted of lying and cheating, and nothing happened. He's right back in his job. He's just fine. He's Senior Executive Service. They cannot be touched. And I am 100% sure that this is where they moved the goats. They took the goats, and the goats are multiplying every year. And plus you're getting second and third generation goats, because by 3 generation, it is in your DNA, the changes in the mind and the LinkedIn mind control. They're filling the Senior Executive Service. You can look up who they are because because they're federally funded, they publish a book called the Plum Book, PLUM, because it's a purple color. You can go online, you can find out. There's thousands of them. There's the deep state, and there's the people who have no morals, no soul. You're wondering, okay, why are congressional staffers caught having ritual sex in the Senate hearing rooms and nothing happens to them? It's because they're Satanists, and they're it's a pedophile class. That's the other lovely thing that the Nazis gave us is the protection of pedophilia. And so that, look at the Plum Book. Look at who's in the Senior Executive Service, and you'll see who is undermining everything. And this is all in preparation for Agenda 2030, which is coming up. And this is when in their plan, the man as God takes ascendancy, God is defeated, the goats are exterminated. I mean, they tried it with the vaccine. They've got other things planned, and the Anunnaki plan from the 1930s is manifest.
Wow.
So 2030, you've got to look at that. That's
Yeah.
and when that happens, then the pedophile becomes the protected class. This is the legislation that's already in every one of our legislatures. I mean, state and federal, in every country, because it's distributed by the International Committee of Jurists, which is a division of the UN. And if that law goes into effect, then anyone who complains about a child being molested, if your child is molested, you go to the police, you get arrested.
Yeah.
For persecuting a pedophile.
You know what's interesting? In Utah, we have one of the higher cases of child abuse, child sexual abuse. And I put the statistics here on the screen. And you'd think our representatives would be trying to do something to stop that. Instead, we have representatives trying to pass legislation to minimize the penalties for trafficking children. And the church is one of my big concerns with the church. The church's law firm, or the church, is that their law firm consistently has been found protecting pedophiles, perpetrators, and even we've did a show on a story about a young man named Michael Jensen who racked up over 50 victims within his people who went to his church and his ward, and the church ended up fighting for him and his family and against the victims, and spent $60 million fighting the victims. And this is all documented. The kid ended up in jail. The church lost, they lost that lawsuit. But to me, I have a problem, and this is, and you see it in our justice system. You see it in Hollywood. You see it. Look at Epstein. We have a system that has been completely taken over. And you see these pedophiles consistently protecting pedophiles, and people want to turn and wait for the justice system to fix it, and it's not. It's been hijacked by these pedophiles. By
the senior executive service, who are the judges, who are the heads of departments, who are the UN representatives. But go look at Agenda 2030 look at the International Committee of Jurists, the ICJ, and the legislation that they are writing, that they are distributing. It's in every state legislature. So Utah must have gotten that early, but it protects pedophiles, become a victim class, an automatic victim class, like they're trying to do with anti-Semitism. If you don't like the genocide, well, then you're an anti-Semite, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's interesting because my wife and I came at this whole thing from the political perspective. We have been always on the political side and concerned with the United Nations and all the corruption, Agenda 2030, the smart cities, the digital ID, this move towards global tyranny. That's where our background comes from. And then we found this trafficking, and we realized this was too important to turn from. But we've been very aware that the United Nations is a satanic organization. They were built as their headquarters was 666 Rockefeller. I mean, it's built on a slaughterhouse. I mean, all the satanic imagery and symbolism around the United Nations is out of control. It's so overt. And then I look at my own church, and this was one of the things I struggled with early before I even found out about this stuff, is why is my church funding all of this? Why is it the only place the United Nations meets outside of 666 Rockefeller in America, Utah? Why do we have such strong connections between my church and this satanic organization? Even one of the Ezra Taft Benson, who was a former prophet back in the day when the church was not the way it is now, called it a satanic organization. And why are we funding it and talking about Agenda 2030 from the pulpit? And why are we just talking about being good global citizens and encouraging people to take the jab? It's been really difficult for me to wrap my head around these things.
Well, that's because they're satanic and terrible. But once you realize the agenda is the death of 90% of the human population and the total enslavement of the rest, the replacement of God by a genetically altered transhumanist being, and the total control of, they're after the universe. And then it makes terrible sense. It doesn't make sense from a human perspective. So you got to, that's why people start thinking that, maybe it's an off-world entity that's doing this. Certainly they've been working very hard at connecting with off-world entities, but no, it's all messed up. And the Christian churches are completely infiltrated. And even the fact that December 25th is our big holiday. And I noticed this year, I've been watching the Jesus being removed from the Christmas celebration. Fewer nativities with the baby in it. Everybody's worshiping Santa Claus, which is Satan. And the 25th is the birthday of Nimrod.
Fascinating.
So,
I know you're short on time, and there's one thing I really wanted to hit with you because it's another tie to Utah, which is you were part of Operation Artichoke. And I want to talk about the use, what you saw there with the use of LSD and the government bringing in drugs, and then Prozac, and then tie it to Utah, which there's another amazing tie there. So would you tell us briefly about Operation Artichoke, what that was, and what you, and kind of let's walk down that road?
Well, if you've ever looked at an artichoke, it's got all those wedges and pieces, and then a core inside. But and that was the joke. That's how your brain is supposed to look. It's supposed to be all divided up into sections that they can pull out, use, so they can have people they can use for different things. So they were experimenting from the beginning. When MKUltra started in 1953, they were obtaining LSD from Switzerland by the ton. And the Nazis had done a lot of work with mescaline, but LSD was the serotonin causes an increase in serotonin, which causes an increase in hallucinations, but you can't take it on a regular basis. So a great deal of energy and effort went into creating the whole SSRI line of drugs. And then even though Prozac is not a derivative of LSD, it's also, the result is to increase serotonin by reducing serotonin receptors. So it does the same thing, only you can take it and be on it all the time. And this was their goal, because that divides your head. Instead of being a nice little fruit, it's an artichoke.
Okay, and who invented Prozac? Because wasn't it tied to one of these MKUltra guys?
Yeah, Eli Lilly. Eli Lilly was the drug company of MKUltra, and they worked with Sidney Gottlieb, who was the chemist and chief poisoner of the CIA, and they were working on all of that to create a drug that could be given to the entire population that population would be addicted to, and then it would dampen all of their normal responses, including their threat responses, which and it worked. I mean, I've always, all my life, I thought, oh, that's ridiculous, it won't work. Because the first time I heard about the genocide, they really didn't like Black people. And I heard a lot about that. In fact, I wrote about it when I was in grade school. I even turned in a report proclaiming that there would be no Black people after 1982. I'd never even seen a Black person. So the school called in my parents, and we had to move. That's what happened every time.
That's something you were taught from your
I was taught that. I didn't invent that. I was taught in one of the classes that the first thing they would do would be wipe out the Black race. And then you look at what they did in retrospect in the 1980s, spreading HIV throughout Baltimore, throughout the Black population in Baltimore, and other experiments that were done inside the U.S. with diseases they were trying to match specifically to the Black race. And then the legislation that the Clinton came up with that separate Black men from their families because they want them in prison, and then Haiti, what's been going on at Haiti, and the fact the Clintons are such a big presence there as we're carrying out a genocide in Haiti of the Black population in Haiti. So they were manifesting, because it makes no sense. None of that makes any sense unless you were in class in the 1950s and heard them say that in the 1980s, the first to go is going to be the Black population. And they were manifesting it. Not well, fortunately, but we've been living under this curse. And the thing that they absolutely cannot stand is the power of Christianity, and that the sheep. So you've got the lamb and the Christ. So he's not sitting around with a goat, he's sitting around with a lamb. The Lamb of God is Christ. So that to me always meant that he loved the sheep. Yeah. And the sheep heard him, listened to him. He gave them tools, and he gave them empowerment, self-love. I mean, what a shock if you figured that the goats were just going to take over, and
well, the goats
Christianity really screwed them up.
The goats worship the enemy, and the sheep hear his voice, and they follow him, and they love him, and there's been a war on the sheep. There's been a war on Christians. There's been a war on and that one of the most effective ways they've waged that war is by infiltrating the churches and leading them astray, and helping implement a lot of the brainwashing, the programming, instead of alerting the sheep to the enemy, to the hideous things that are going on in the real world. But you talk about
the threat to them,
and a part of the way they've done that is through the pharmaceutical industry, antidepressants, and that's why I'm interested in what you were talking about with Prozac, because there has been an agenda again to brainwash and mind control the populations. And again, you look at the part of the reason we live in the Truman Show is because it is the television, the programming that is constantly coming into our lives. It is the drugs that they have us on. And one of the things that's interesting about Utah is one of the highest states that has the highest concentration of taking antidepressants. And then when you look at again, I just draw correlations between the high level of the LDS Church of Satan that is here. There is this real darkness. There is this level of problem of cult, just follow. You look at our politicians, the Romneys. We talked about Romneys. Utah has been in love with Mitt Romney and not knowing who his family is and who they are. And again, the MKUltra and Utah is a state that is, I think, this mind control has been extremely effective in our backyard. I just can't not see these patterns in my backyard and say, hey, we're one of the higher states for child abuse. We know that, that this ritual abuse is rampant in our backyard. But my whole thing is, how do you break the sheep? Because again, I love, sheep hear his voice, but how do you wake the sheep up to the fact that they are been under mind control? That they are being manipulated.
And can the sheep fight the goats?
Yes, because ultimately, guess what? This is so much bigger than you and I. This is so much bigger than, these individuals, even the most wicked people on this earth. And this is a battle between God and the adversary. We're in a biblical time period. And this is their war. This is God. And you hear the scripture, the battle is the Lord's. This is not our fight. This is God and Jehovah and Michael versus the Antichrist and Lucifer and these ancient spirits, Baphomet, that have been warring over the hearts and over the souls of men at the expense of the children. And the children have been paying the price. And this is their fight. They win, and guess what? The question is: are we going to stand? Are we going to participate? Are we going to fight with them, or are we going to have our head in the sand and be blind to everything going on, or participate? Because silence in the face of evil is evil.
Yes, and everybody skips the first 4 verses of Revelation. Everybody should read it seriously, because John talks about the attitudes of the church, the 7 churches of Asia. I've been to them all. They're all dust now. And he predicted their fall and their, and the worst thing he could put on them, I think, was Laodicea, where he said, you are neither hot nor cold. You know, Jesus can't love you if you are just lukewarm. And that's where the church is right now. It's like tolerant. Okay, you can be a furry. Okay, you can be whatever, because we're the church of whatever. Well, that's not going to cut it. And Laodicea was reduced to dust. So as human beings, yeah, all this is going on. But we have to decide, what is our country? When the economic crash comes, which is on our doorstep, it's here. I was in the Soviet Union when it fell apart. So I watched Russia reinvent itself quite successfully. And the major reason that they were so successful is they immediately, strongly, they brought back the churches. But they brought back a different version of the churches. And that's the thing. That's the thing I got to see. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that, because the way the churches were at the time of the revolution was corrupt and had numerous faults. They reinvented themselves because no one remembered what the churches were. And they developed a much more scriptural version of Christianity. And in the last 10 years, 20 years, they've rebuilt or built 30,000 churches. And that includes also synagogues and temples, because there are mosques. So whatever existed before the revolution was replaced. And they say the religion is the same, but I've studied it and it's quite different. But we need to do the same. This is our chance to reform all of this when all of this crumbles.
Well, that's an important thing you said, when all this crumbles. Because one of the things
we're going to go to dust,
well,
just like Laodicea.
When you understand Marxism, which I'm sure you do, one of the tenets of the enemy is to burn and destroy God's creation and then rebuild. It is to burn things down and then rebuild. That's why the Phoenix is. I know people can see something beautiful in the Phoenix, but it is actually Satan uses that imagery a lot, because it is to burn things down and then rebuild. And whether it's burning down the individual through torture and pain and breaking them and then rebuilding in these satanic people's fashion, or whether it's a country, burn it down and rebuild, and I believe if we truly want to understand where we are and what's happening, you have to understand the bigger reference and time frame and where we are. And the lens we need to be looking at thing is, we are on the verge of the Antichrist, and the Antichrist will not come on the scene until everything has been burned down. And that means people losing faith in our government systems. That means the government collapse. And I believe one of the other things we will see is the collapse of people's faith in the corporate churches. And I think that's because here's what's going to happen is you will see chaos come, and people will lose faith in their churches because they've opened their eyes to the corruption. Well, guess what? They've lost faith in their political institutions. And then you have a massive crisis come on a global scale, and no one has anywhere to look for leadership, because we've seen the corruption in our churches. We've lost faith in our churches. We've lost faith in our political leaders. And that opens the door for a new leader who I believe will be this Antichrist, a mix of transhumanist man and mixed with AI, who will now have a world religion. And I believe we will see the world now look for him. But that has to come after the burning down of things. And that's what's hard, because I understand that's one of the hard things about what we're doing is exposing the evil in my church and in all these churches. Is on one hand, it has to be, right? God talked about exposing the evil from the rooftops. That is happening. That is biblical. Like, the evil has to be exposed. But the painful thing about that is that the enemy will use that as the next step to him saying, look, all these things are not, you can't have faith in them. have faith in me. But we live in amazing times, and it is biblical.
Yes, and there are lambs of God being born, and the best thing that can happen is we don't find them. Because look what happened to Charlie Kirk. I believe he was one of those lambs of God who was standing up, separating, maturing. He came from the sheep, and they couldn't have that.
Yeah.
And so the best thing that can happen is the lambs grow, mature, and in quiet, in protection. They'll be out hunting for the lambs who will empower and guide the sheep. God wins.
Yes.
I am 100% certain of that. He's won before, over and over and over, and we're fighting for our standing as a nation, and we're fighting as our standing for as human beings.
Humanity itself.
Are we going to be a race that eats children? I mean, for God's sake, can't we all stand up one morning and say, no, this is over. No more abortion, no more child harm, no more satanic abuse, no more trafficking until it ended. If we did that, we would become a different nation and could move forward from there, because we have to. People don't realize how bad it is.
No, we don't. And I also think, isn't it interesting talking about Charlie Kirk that happened here in Utah?
Yeah,
it's not a
and
coincidence.
that's why
Again, when you understand how deep this cult is, this darkness runs in the state, how entrenched it is in our legal system, and from the top to about how long it's been going on in the state, far longer than MKUltra. This has been going on generations. And so it has reached a point of saturation that it makes complete sense to me why Charlie Kirk happened here, why it was the perfect place to cover it up, because we've been covering these things up for generations.
I believe you, and the fact that I've lived through all this is quite amazing, considering what has been done to me. And I think that I'm 77. That just is astonishing to me. So I'm able to tell the story from the end of the 1940s, the beginning of the surge in America. Yeah, as you say, it went way back, but it went on steroids, and it infiltrated our country from that point to this. And I want to thank you for all you do with your program, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
Julia, I would be absolutely honored. Please tell people where they can find you and follow you, where they can get your books.
There's my website. It's you can see it under Angels Over Moscow. It's JulietteEngel.com, and you can get my books there. And I highly recommend for MKUltra reading Sparky, and Trine Day is my publisher. You can also get the books on the publisher's site, but you can get there from my website. We didn't get to my 20 years living in Russia and through the fall of the Soviet Union, and more reasons why I'm amazed I'm still alive, running an underground railroad that we documented rescuing 70,000 people in 20 years, and that's caused a change in that country. So, and then my third book is about the history of banking, organized crime, and how Russian mafia was created in Russia. So and I have a Substack, and that'll be in the show notes. And I've also given them the links to the archives from the National Security Archives, where the CIA confesses all these things. And that's about 2,400 documents you can go through, and you can verify everything I've said there.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. We don't live in a time where you have to take our word for it. You can do the research. You can talk to the survivors. You can read in the show notes. You can read the documents themselves. This isn't theory. This is reality. This is the true reality of the world we live in. And I have to ask you this, because I know you spent a lot of time with Russia. Are you a fan of Alexander Solzhenitsyn?
I wasn't, but now I am. Now that I understand more about what he was talking about, yeah. I
have it. He has shaped my life. I am here because of him.
Ah,
One of the things he said is, one man who tells the truth can bring down a tyranny. And I believe
yes.
that. I believe that we as individuals do not know the power that lies within us. And the greatest power we have is to speak the truth. It is to bring light into the darkness. It is to stand against the lie. And whether the lie is about political tyranny and political corruption within our political system, and then exposing the gulags, the prison systems that were there and what was really behind the Soviet Union, the evil, or whether it's exposing what was going on in Germany and what's happened with MKUltra, or exposing the underground tunnels and the underground prisons that happen in our own backyards with the satanic ritual abuse. I truly believe one man, one woman who speaks the truth can bring down tyranny. And that's why I believe in the importance of speaking. And I want to thank you for being someone I believe he would, someone who reminds me of him. And anyways, thank you for joining us. I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, please have me back. And if you want to have a couple of us on, like Kathy and I together, we feed off each other.
Let's
so
do that. Let's
be
do
glad
that.
to do it.
That would be a treat for all of us. Well, thank you so much, Juliette.
You're welcome.
All right. God bless you.
You too. Bye-bye.
And to our listeners, I just wanted to give a last another shout out. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for standing. Thank you for choosing to not sit in silence. Thank you for choosing to not look away from hard, difficult things. These things are painful. This is a difficult journey. It's difficult. It's painful to see the things that we see. This is why we're here. I mean, this is why we are on the earth. Anyways, I just love you guys, appreciate you, and thank you for all you do. We'll see you on the next show. I have this the greatest love for survivors. You know that. And people always ask, Jason, what can we do? What can we do? I stand completely and firmly behind Ashley Smith and her organization, Still Waters Healing Foundation. I'm going to have her share a little bit of what she's doing, and we're going to encourage you to help her as she reaches out to help these incredible survivors in their healing.
I am the founder and director of Still Waters Healing Foundation, and as an SRA survivor myself, I created this space for survivors of sexual abuse, SRA, and human sex trafficking, where they can find healing and safety and stillness inside community. The heart of the foundation is found in Psalms chapter 23, and we learned there that even though these survivors have walked through the valley of the shadow of death, the Lord can restore their souls and lead them beside still waters. With this heart of the foundation, we teach survivors to bring stillness back into their bodies, to their nervous system, to their minds, their emotions, and ultimately their soul, with safe support and in community. We begin with our Open Waters monthly in-person gatherings where survivors experience nervous system education, somatic healing, and practical tools to empower their healing to help them move forward in their journey. We're expanding our trusted network of professionals, offering a range of healing modalities and therapies so each survivor can find what truly supports their individual journey as well as their community healing. And from there, we move into deeper programs and an immersive retreats with our first retreat coming this fall, where we spend 3 days going into deeper healing. And our website is stillheals.org, and this is where you can join or donate.
Ash, you're awesome. Thank you for doing that. And I'm going to ask you guys, you are so incredible. Our audience does so much to fight and stand on for this battle of light and dark. I know you guys are generous. You've been so generous with us, with Alexi and I, especially with our lawsuit, and we have the greatest love and appreciation for all of your sacrifices. I am going to ask you to make a sacrifice and help Ashley and her organization. I believe in her. I believe that this is why she is on this earth. I believe this is why she has been rescued from what she has been through, is so that she can lead this effort. And so I'm going to ask you, please go to her website, make a donation, help her make a difference and be part of the transforming some of these incredible lives of these individuals and helping them heal. Thank you guys so much.